This is an In the Dark special with Todd Harris Jr. and my special guest, John Suits, for a roundtable meeting, the first of hopefully many, that we will sit and discuss some of the things from past episodes and also about future episodes going forward. John, are you there, sir?
Yes. Are you King Arthur or am I Lancelot?
I definitely want to be King Arthur.
Damn it.
Yeah. One of my old passwords, or pretty much for everything, was Camelot, so...
Well, I mean, if you use Camelot, then disaster will strike, so...
Right. It was just because, for some reason, it was, I don't know, it just stuck in my mind. So I used it for everything, literally. But anyway, thanks for being here. This is a roundtable discussion that we're going to have. It's not really a roundtable because you're far away and I'm here in Tennessee. But what I'd like to do is just basically talk a little bit tonight about the podcast. And the reason I brought you on is because if people don't already know, they should know. You're basically a co-founder of this podcast, and I just want people to know a little bit more about your role in this whole thing. One of the things is you've designed all of the poster art for all of my episodes, and I'd like to point out that you were also instrumental in naming some of the episodes that we are presenting and have already presented. So I wanted to do that shout out real quick. And we're also going to spend just a little bit of time discussing the upcoming episode, The Signpost Up Ahead, Part 1 and 2, which were just completed a week ago. So first of all, I like to know a little bit about what people's thoughts are on the episodes, and the reason is because the majority of those were me getting back into doing something like this, doing a radio type show that's produced rather than live. This isn't a live show. This is something that, we produce. And there's a lot of back and forth between you and me. I'd like the listeners to know that, it starts out with an idea. Normally it's you telling me, hey, let's do an episode on such and such. And then coming up with an idea and a title. And then lo and behold, it's like the next thing I know, you're sending me poster art, sometimes within the same day. So it comes together really quick, is what I'd like to basically, I'd like the listeners to know that all this stuff comes together very quickly, but the process of getting there can sometimes be a long process. And a lot of that has to do with research. The last two episodes, the Orson Welles mass hysteria episode, those were challenging because I had to go and do quite a bit of research on those. And so with this episode coming up, that was even more extensive. The research that I ended up doing on that was even more. I would go into one direction and find something, and then something else would pop up. And so I had to make a decision, since we're limited on time, what we were going to actually include in Rod Serling's life story. So that's basically why we're here, though, tonight, is we're also here to talk about future episodes. What would you like the show to be going forward?
Well, I know that we're going to do a military mysteries episode, which, I have somewhat of an experience in. I've been in the Navy 18 years,
Mm-hmm.
11 years on active duty. But I'm a fan of like the unexplained aspects of the military, like
Right.
like the Nimitz UFO incident, or
Mm-hmm.
the Frankenstein hoax, or there's a couple of incidents that a friend of mine was involved in. He was in Djibouti at the time, I believe. And I'll just leave it at that. He encountered a haunted school. So, little teaser for anyone listening.
Exactly. Well, that's a good segue into what we're about to listen to here. We're going to play a little teaser from the upcoming Rod Serling episode, The Signpost Up Ahead Part 1. We're going to play it, and then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss it a little bit.
Okay.
So, here's the clip.
Attention, please. This film, now released for public showing, has been captured from the enemy. It is a typical example of vicious Japanese propaganda. Please.
We're back with the roundtable discussion, roundtable meeting with Todd and John. This is a very impromptu get-together that I kind of decided to do it this way because not all of the episodes have interviews. Some of them do when they call for that, and some of them don't. In the case of The Signpost Up Ahead, Part 1 and 2, I made the decision to not do any interviews for those two parts. And the reason is because I wanted the listeners to have a more cinematic experience when they listen to these two parts. It's almost like you're listening to a mini movie. So what we just heard, though, the clip that we just played, was a anti-Japanese propaganda cartoon called Tokyo Jokio. And I stumbled across this while I was doing my research for Rod Serling. And it was unexpected. It wasn't something that I really had ever heard of, but I thought about it and I was compelled to go back and do a little bit more research on Warner Brothers cartoons from that era. And it was the era that Rod Serling joined the Army, became a paratrooper, and like many other young men his age, went off to the war in Europe. I feel like it was necessary to show the sentiment from that particular era of what was really going on in the minds of the people that were living in the United States, and also the ones that volunteered to go over and fight. So, from a historical perspective, I think it's important. And some people would probably question when they hear it, they're going to be like, what does that have to do with Rod Serling? Could you probably guess, John, what that has to do with Rod Serling?
Somewhat, but I'm waiting to hear your interpretation.
Well, there is no right or wrong answer, but here's the interpretation that I came up with. Is that the show The Twilight Zone deals with social issues. And I feel that, some of the hidden meanings in the show were things that people of his generation had come across. One of those being propaganda from World War II. There was quite a bit of paranoia leading up to the invasion in Europe, and also the post-war feeling of paranoia as well. You had McCarthyism. So Rod Serling, I believe, and a lot of the writers of the show drew from those experiences in order to create some of the stories that were presented on the show. Now, a lot of those are, it's veiled, it's thinly veiled references, but they're there nonetheless. What's your take on that? Being a huge fan of the show.
I can see some truth to that. I mean, I feel a lot of the themes in the show were induced by PTSD, or what was known then as shell shock. Not like today, but induced by nightmares of war, nightmares of, oh no, are we going to get bombed again? Nightmares of, oh shit, the communists are coming to get us, a lot of things. Post-war, pre-Cold War, communism, McCarthyism, social issues.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to use that cartoon in the podcast. I also wanted to ask you, John, what some of your favorite Twilight Zone episodes are. So let's go to a break. We're going to play a song during the break for the listeners, and then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss some of our favorite episodes of the Twilight Zone. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Awesome. We'll be right back with the Roundtable meeting with John and Todd.